Have you ever gotten home after spending time with friends and then your brain opens what I like to call the replay room? Suddenly you're reliving every conversation. Why did I tell that story? That joke wasn't funny. I talked way too much. Why did they make that face? Did I interrupt them? Do they think I'm weird? And here's the strange part. The people you were with, they're probably at home brushing their teeth, watching Netflix, or trying to remember where they left their keys. Meanwhile, your brain has hired itself as the director of a documentary called Every Slightly Awkward Thing I Have Ever Said. So, why? Why does our brain replay conversations, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days? As it turns out, there's actually a fascinating psychological reason. And once you understand it, those replay loops start making a whole lot more sense.
Welcome to Nerdy Psychology. Break it down with a little curiosity. So be curious, stay kind, keep your mind nerdy.
Hi, psychology nerds. I'm Dr. Angel, and this is Nerdy Psychology, where we learn why our brains, well, do what they do. Today, we're talking about the replay room, that strange mental space where your brain pulls up an old conversation and says, okay, but let's analyze this from like 17 different angles. If you have ever wondered why your brain won't let a conversation go, stick around. By the end, you'll understand why the loop happens, what uncertainty has to do with it, and how to respond when your mind starts acting like a social detective with no off switch. So let's put on our nerdy glasses and dive right in. Meet Emily. Emily goes to a birthday dinner. Everyone laughs. Dinner goes well. People hug goodbye. Objectively, nothing bad happened. Then Emily gets home and her brain starts going, okay, let's review this footage. First, the joke she told. Then that moment she stumbled over a word. Then the time she might have laughed too loudly. Then the pause after saying goodbye. And by midnight, Emily has herself convinced that everyone secretly found her completely annoying. The next morning, she gets a text. Last night was so much fun. Emily is genuinely shocked because her replay room looked nothing like the reality. So, why does this happen? Here's something fascinating. Your brain isn't replaying conversations because it enjoys torturing you. It's replaying them because your brain is a prediction machine. One of its biggest jobs is learning, and every interaction becomes, well, data for it to learn. And after something socially important happens, your brain quietly asks, anything we should learn about that? Normally, that replay lasts for a few seconds. But when uncertainty enters the picture, that replay keeps going because uncertainty is expensive for the brain. The brain hates unfinished puzzles. Imagine texting a friend that you normally hear back from in like 10 minutes, but today, nothing. 30 minutes, an hour, 3 hours. Now your replay room goes, maybe I said too much. Maybe they're upset. Maybe they don't even like me. Then they finally reply, sorry, my phone died. Your brain has spent 3 hours solving a mystery that literally never existed. Here's where the neuroscience gets interesting. The brain is constantly trying to reduce uncertainty. It's not waiting for the perfect information before it responds. It's constantly taking little bits of data, tone, timing, facial expressions, word choice, body language, and turning them into this prediction. If it doesn't have enough information, it starts making predictions. And socially, those predictions usually sound like meanings. That pause means they were annoyed. That short text means something is wrong. That look means I said too much. Sometimes those predictions are helpful. Sometimes they're wildly inaccurate. And the tricky part is that the brain can mistake a possibility for a conclusion. It does not say, here's one possible interpretation. It says, this is probably what happened. It's a little like autocorrect. Most of the time, it's useful. Occasionally, it's hilariously wrong. Autocorrect sees a few letters and then it guesses the whole word. Your brain sees a few social cues and guesses the whole story. Your brain does the same thing socially. And when the cue is unclear, your brain may start reaching for an explanation that feels safest, not the one that feels the most accurate. And this is why one neutral face can suddenly become a complete social theory. Okay, imagine walking past your coworker. You smile. They don't smile back. Immediately, your replay room says, they're mad at me. Reality? Maybe. Maybe they just got terrible news. Maybe they have a migraine. Maybe they didn't even see you. Your brain just filled in the blanks, made its own story, not because it knows, but because it couldn't tolerate not knowing. Here's something people rarely realize: the replay isn't actually about the conversation at all, it's about uncertainty. And uncertainty is not a small thing to the nervous system. From a brain science perspective, uncertainty means your brain doesn't have enough information to make a confident prediction. And when the situation involves social belonging, rejection, embarrassment, or status, the brain tends to treat that uncertainty as important data. The brain would rather make a prediction than sit in this blank space. So it starts running simulations. It replays the facial expression. It replays the tone of voice. It replays the pause before someone answered, not because it has truth, but because it's trying to reduce prediction error. In simple terms, prediction error is the gap between what your brain expected and what actually happened. And if your brain expected warmth, but someone seemed distant, that gap grabs attention. If your brain expected laughter, but there's silence, that gap also grabs attention. The replay room is the brain asking, can we explain the gap? Think about that. Research on intolerance of uncertainty shows that when people have a harder time tolerating unknown outcomes, they're more likely to get pulled into rumination, especially around anxiety and social evaluation. Rumination feels like problem solving, but it often becomes repetitive reviewing without any new information. And that's why it can feel so sticky. Your brain thinks, if I can replay this one more time, maybe I'll finally know what it meant. If I could magically tell you, nope, nobody thought you were weird. Most replay loops would end instantly because the brain finally has certainty. But when certainty is not available, the brain may keep searching for the conclusion it cannot actually prove. So, why do some people replay more? Now, here's where the personality and life experience actually matter. Some brains enter the replay room more quickly because they've learned to scan the social situation for possible danger. In psychology, this is often connected to something called post event processing. That means after social interaction, the brain reviews what happens, focused on perceived mistakes, and tries to figure out whether you were judged, rejected, misunderstood, or unsafe. And if your brain already expects social situations to be risky, it is more likely to review them afterwards with a threat detection lens. If you've experienced bullying, rejection, criticism, emotional abuse, perfectionism, social anxiety, those experiences can train the nervous system to treat small social cues as meaningful. Your brain may have learned social mistakes can cost me. So now, instead of simply remembering the evening, it audits the evening. It searches for tiny signs: the delayed laugh, the neutral face, the shorter text, the pause that might have meant absolutely nothing. And this is where negativity bias comes in. The brain tends to give extra weight to information that could signal threat because historically, missing danger was more costly than missing reassurance. So 30 warm moments can get pushed into the background while one ambiguous moment gets completely spotlighted. So it checks, and then it checks again, and then it checks again. And not because you're broken, but because your brain thinks it's protecting you. And here's the key: the more self focused you become during the interaction, the more material the replay room has afterwards. If you are monitoring your tone, Your facial expression, your word choice, your laugh, and how everyone reacted, your brain collected lots and lots and lots of data so it could analyze it later. And that does not mean the replay is accurate. It means your brain gathered a whole lot of anxious evidence and then tried to build, well, a whole case from it. All right, picture this. Somebody gives a presentation at work. They worked hard on it. They practiced, they rehearsed it. They organized their slides, and when they finished, most of the room responds warmly. People nod. A few coworkers say, "Hey, nice job." Someone even asks some thoughtful questions because they were absolutely engaged. Objectively, there's plenty of evidence that the presentation went well. But then, on the drive home, the replay room opens and the brain does not replay the applause. It does not replay the nods. It does not replay the nice job. It replays the one coworker sitting at the back with their arms crossed. And suddenly that one image becomes the whole headline. They hated it. I sounded unprepared. Everyone probably noticed. Now, here's the nerdy part. The crossed arms might have meant criticism, or it might have meant absolutely nothing. Maybe that coworker was cold. Maybe they were concentrating. Maybe that's just how they sit in meetings. But because the cue was ambiguous, the threat detection system gave it extra priority. That's the negativity bias in action. That brain takes one possible threat and lets it outweigh all the evidence of safety. So here's a question I want you to ask next time your brain starts replaying. Not how do I stop? Instead, ask, what is my brain trying to protect me from? That's a completely different question. Maybe it's embarrassment. Maybe it's rejection or failure. Maybe it's being misunderstood or not belonging. The replay isn't the problem, it's the strategy. The brain is attempting to protect you. It's just using outdated software. So, what do we do when our replay room opens up? Instead of arguing with the replay, I want you to slow it down and sort it. Tool one, name the replay. When you notice yourself reviewing the same moment again and again and again, gently label it. I'm in the replay room. That tiny label matters because it creates distance. You are no longer inside the story. You're noticing that your brain is telling you a story. Tool two, facts, story, signal. Then separate the replay into three parts. Facts, what actually happens. Story, what is my brain adding? Signal, what is my brain trying to protect me from? For example, fact, they paused before answering. Story, they were annoyed with me. Signal, I am scared I embarrassed myself or lost connection. Tool three, look for the missing evidence. The replay room often edits like a biased documentary. It zooms in on the awkward pause and it cuts out the smile or the hug goodbye or the thoughtful questions or the text the next morning. So ask, what evidence did my anxious brain leave on the cutting room floor? Tool four, choose a closing line.